So let's talk about the leap of victory for people on social media and for freedom of speech away from big tech companies that want to censor through corporate control and government overreaching to the point of authoritarianism to censor and monitor and track the narratives that we're seeing on social media. And once they have control over what we say and what we do on social media, they have more and more control about our culture and our lifestyle. But this is a big victory. This is a big victory. And it happened in Texas just a couple days ago uh, by the Attorney General, Ken Paxton. He tweeted this out saying, "Breaking, I just secured a massive victory for the Constitution and free speech in federal court. Big tech cannot censor the political voices of any Texan. The Fifth Circuit rejects the idea that corporations have a free-willing First Amendment right to censor what people say." And then he links the documentations of what they filed in here. So here it is here, the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit and Ken Paxton, Attorney General. So it says, the Texas statute named House Bill 20 generally prohibits large social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube, Instagram, you get the rest, from censoring speech based on the viewpoints of its speaker. The platforms urge us to hold the statute is factually unconstitutional and hence cannot be applied to anyone at any time under any circumstances. So then he says, in urging such sweeping relief, the platforms offer a rather odd inversion of the First Amendment. That amendment, of course, protects every person's right to freedom of speech. But the platforms argue that buried somewhere in the person's enumerated right to free speech lies a corporation's unrated right to muzzle speech. So this has been the argument that's been going along for a long while now. That they're arguing that, well, corporations, they should be respected as a person, and as respected as a person, they have the fundamental rights to censor people. They have the fundamental rights to be the editors of their publications, of their social media sites, which social media is not a publisher. Social media is a platform. It's for people to log on, create accounts, and be social to one another. It's the public town square. And that's what people have been arguing and trying to fight against this big tech oligarchy cracking down and muzzling on freedom of speech, because it is not treated the same way as a newspaper or a publisher or anything like that. They don't have that fundamental right. They're supposed to be treated as a platform. That's the whole idea of social media. That is what I've been saying since the start of all this. So it's good to see that we're getting into the right direction here. The implications of the platform's argument are staggering. On the platform's view, email providers, mobile phone companies, and banks could cancel the accounts of anyone who sends an email, makes a phone call, or spends money in support of a disfavored political party, candidate, or business. So that's what the corporations are fighting against you for. That's what they're saying their freedom of speech is. That they have the right to shut down your phone account. They have the right to shut down your email provider. They have the right to take your money and freeze your bank accounts, take away your livelihood, because you are not favorable to their agenda. That is what they're considering their right to speech. As opposed to someone that is an individual and making an individual decision. And this is something I've been arguing since day one, and I've had constant fights with people about this on what exactly is the right to freedom of speech. And what I've been saying is that you need to have a principled stance of freedom of speech. You should have freedom of speech regardless of who that person is, because once you take that away from one individual, it's going to happen to more and more people. You're going to open up that floodgates, and it might happen to you one day. and you continue to open that floodgate, it's gonna get even worse, because now they're taking away bank accounts, now they're taking away financial assets. People are, mobile phone carriers. They're gonna cut your phone lines if they don't like the conversation you're having. They're gonna take away your email. That's how crazy uncontrollable big tech companies are, which is why this is perfect. This is definitely the step in the right direction. And just to show you some examples here of how far this goes, and just real life situations of why we need a bill like this to be passed. This is in Texas, by the way, but I think this should represent more and more counties, more and more districts, and even pass into federal law to mandate the protection of individual freedom of speech for all people. Because this is how crazy this gets. So the Free Speech Union, they tweeted this out saying PayPal, which is the online money transfer service, PayPal has shut down the account of the Free Speech Union. Financial services being withdrawn from people is the new battlefront in the ongoing war against free speech. Making your feelings known by submitting a complaint about UK PayPal's actions here. So they took away the financial assets of Free Speech Union. They took away the financial assets. It's not just silencing someone's post. It's not just reporting someone. They're deliberately taking away someone's financial assets, someone's business, someone's livelihood, scrambled away, frozen, unable to access their accounts, shutting down their bank accounts, shutting down their phone lines, shutting down their entire livelihoods and businesses, because it doesn't co-opt in line with their agenda, with the establishment agenda, the ones that they're trying to manipulate and control. And once they manipulate and control, they have domination over the culture, over the lifestyle of every single individual. That's why this is very important. Regardless of how you feel about people, regardless of their opinions, regardless of even if you disagree with someone extremely, you have to fight for their right for freedom of speech, because how is it any different than yours? How is it any different as a human being, different than yours? And we've seen this constantly throughout, even here in Canada. We've shown this multiple times. This is the extreme side of going against freedom of speech, going against, being authoritarian thugs. Canada says it will freeze the bank accounts of Freedom Convoy truckers who continue their anti-vaccine mandate blockades. So even people that are peacefully protesting against authoritarianism are going to be cracked down with even more extreme authoritarianism. And again, not just silencing their posts, they're taking away their livelihoods. They're taking away their entire livelihoods because they don't line up with the official bullshit narrative of the establishment. And here's also this to point out too. So there's a site here called Gays Against, I don't know if I can say the word because it's bleeped out there, but you know what it is. And it says, breaking, we've just been banned from Venmo and PayPal within minutes of each other for violating their user agreements. We are an organization that consists entirely of gay people whose only mission is to safeguard children from abuse. Woke homophobia is real, folks. So, again, another organization is being stripped away by authoritarianism, by the oligarchy, by corporate domination in line with the government to silence out the people. Another organization that's trying to do, good faith humanitarianism is being stripped away. And they're not being told why. They're not being told how. That's how they've created the system. They make these terms and services so vague for people that anyone can lose their livelihoods. Anyone can be silenced out. That's how they keep going with this. That's how they get under the legal science of all this. That's how they're able to get their fundamental rights of freedom of speech is they make the terms of services so vague, so unbelievably vague, that they can target anybody who steps out of line. And as Glenn Greenwald makes the point, it makes no difference what you think of this group. What you're seeing here is the new and much more alarming frontier of corporate censorship. And that's what I've been saying. Regardless how you feel of individuals, regardless how you feel of someone like, I don't know, Alex Jones or Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro or myself or Jimmy Dore or Jackson Hinkle or Kyle Kalinske, whoever the person is, regardless, you have to fight for their freedom of speech as much as yours. Because how is it any different fundamentally as a human being for another human being? How do they deserve less rights than you when in regards to speech? How is it any different? Banishment from the financial system for having the wrong ideology. Trudeau's freezing of protesters' bank accounts previewed this. So we had this in Canada. And just goes to show you how far this can go. And why we need someone like Attorney General Ken Paxton to step in and give us that victory. Give us that small victory. Like I said, I know it's just in Texas, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I hope people take note of this. Because this is something we desperately need in this time, in this new era of the information superhighway, the information era, the 21st century. You know, social media has become the new public square. It is used not just for sharing, you know, cat photos with friends. It's used for communicative purposes. It's used for information, research. You know, a lot of jobs are now on social media. So you're doing e-commerce stuff. This is why this is so important. This is exactly why people need to wake up to this. Even from a personal standpoint, I have been dealt with this and fighting these hurdles as a content creator. So I don't know if people are aware of this, but I'm going to make it public now. I had to start my channel all over again. I had to literally restart. They burnt the channel right to the ground. I had to restart from the ashes. Because YouTube has been silencing out. They've been suppressing. They've been demonetizing a lot of our content, especially when in regards to COVID, in regards to, you know, the data and science and analysis, anything like that. They've even tracked down a lot of the Ukraine coverage that we've been mentioning here. They've been tracking down a lot of that information. Anything to mention about the Canadian government and their corruption, they've had heyday over that. So they took down the entirety of Kitz Corner. The entirety of Kitz Corner. And again, these social media companies, their evil little manipulative genius minds was able to do this because every terms of services update became more and more vague to the point that they were just able to do this willy-nilly without actually telling people why. And this is what I've been screaming at the top of my lungs at YouTube for. I've been saying constant emails, text messages. I even called their toll-free number to find out what the hell is going on. Nothing. They were so vague, it was ridiculous. And this is the email I got from them saying, "Hi, Kitz Corner. We have reviewed your content and found severe or repeated violations of our community guidelines." They don't tell you what guidelines you repeated in violations. They don't tell you the guidelines, but they'll tell you that you have repeated violations. Like, it's just unbelievably crazy. Because of this, we have removed your YouTube channel. We know this is probably upsetting news. Like, why even add that in? Why even add that in? Why kick a dog while it's down? That's just stupid. But it's their job to it's their job to make sure that YouTube is a safe place for all. Blah blah blah. No, it's not. The reason you're adding that in is the legal mumbo jumbo to save your asses, because the governments have been tracking down on big corporations to silence out more. So they're doing this on behalf of the government, on behalf of the oligarchy, on behalf of the elite establishment that wants to silence out and suppress dissenting voices. This is all legal bullshit. It has nothing to do with actually making YouTube safer or anything to do with the viewers. It has to do with them. It has to do with their top line and fixating their agenda and manufacturing consent. That's all this has to do with it. And then we've removed your channel. Yeah, I'm not gonna go through all that, but I just want to also show this too. Just a quick little thing here. We mentioned about this a few times, but in Canada, there was a bill passed called C11, and that was the Online Streamers Act, and that was a step into more authoritarian censorship here in the country of Canada, that the government was going to have even more of a hold on big tech companies to try to promote Canadian voices, which you'd think someone like me, a 27-year-old Canadian kid doing a podcast in his basement, might be one of those people that would get promoted. Well, no. Because the thing is, they don't actually tell you what Canadian content they're promoting. And considering it's the Trudeau government, it's what they want to promote. So you get the understanding of this. You get why this is so massively corrupted. You get the point that this is another censorship bill tactic to silence out voices like me, to silence out voices like you're going to see here, JJ McCullough, who does a lot of great, excellent videos, and to silence out dissenting voices that are critical of the Canadian establishment and critical of the oligarchy. And JJ McCullough is going to explain this here while sitting in a lazy boy, looks like. Because, you know, when you're railing against censorship, you want to make sure you're comfortable. But he's a well-endowed YouTuber, and he's going to explain to people how C11 is dangerous for dissenting voices in Canada, and how this promotion of Canadian content, again, is just a legal front for them to get away with more censorship, because it's decided by them. It's them deciding what's acceptable, what's Canadian enough for Canadians to watch, which is kind of ridiculous. But anyway, here's what he had to say.
It is very important to listen to what the government has said quite explicitly is their agenda in pushing for this legislation. And what the government has said quite explicitly is that they feel there is a danger to Canada's cultural sovereignty, right? So this idea that Canadian culture is some sort of tangible, identifiable thing that is under threat because Canadians are not watching enough of the right kind of videos online. Right? So it's very important to be very clear to understand what is sort of like the ideological motivation that is animating this. And I think that sometimes we can speak of sort of legislation as if it's just sort of something that's kind of unfolding on its own sort of accord. But no, like, you know, I spend a lot of time thinking about politics. You know, I've been a political commentator for like 10 years, so maybe my analysis is a little bit more sort of politicized, a little bit more cynical perhaps. But the thing that winds up sort of generating a lot of the anxiety if we assume that the animating sort of purpose of this legislation is to protect our cultural sovereignty is the question of, well, who gets to decide what that means? Who gets to decide what Canadian culture is? Who gets to decide when Canadian culture is being threatened or undermined or is in some sort of danger that requires government's helping hand to protect? And we do know that the agenda of this government, and, you know, broadly the government of Ottawa for the last, you know, however many decades, is the idea that Canadian culture is something that requires a sort of government-led sort of initiative to sort of protect and defend and build. The idea that the culture of this country is ultimately something that Ottawa will have a guiding hand in sort of, you know, instigating and sort of protecting and driving more broadly. And I think that that is something that just many, many Canadian content creators are sort of frankly terrified by. They don't like the idea that they have to dance to some sort of government tune, and that their success as content creators, their livelihood, will in some ways be dependent on their ability to make their content conform with what some sort of council of, of experts, sort of self-proclaimed adjudicators of what is in the cultural interest of this country to decide.
So, unfortunately, it cuts off there, but you get the gist of it. You get the gist of it. You know, I made fun of the fact that the Biden administration had that Ministry of Truth, where they were trying to have this, government organized board full of, ex-CIA officials and the FBI and, these ex-employees of Homeland Security that were going to track down on, misinformation, hateful content on the internet, and how crazy and conspiratorial that is, and how fringe and authoritarian that is for the Biden administration, how America's so in a dystopia about that. Well, now you're seeing the Canadian version of this. And in the Canadian version, they make it sound like it's so friendly because, we're promoting Canadian content. You should be proud of your nation, proud of all the accomplishments that we've done. But like you said there, who are the arbitrators? Who are the ones making those decisions? And why is it those decisions being made by unknown figures in the government and not by actual Canadian viewers? Because they're saying we got to promote Canadian content. We got to promote the nation and its history and its glorification. I'm sure they're not going to, mention about the residential schools. I'm sure they're not going to mention about the craziness of mandates. I'm sure they're not going to allow, people to critique the mandates that Justin Trudeau has enforced repeatedly to the point of extremism. They're not going to allow that to happen. But what Canadian content, what Canadian cultural content are they going to promote? What exactly are they promoting in this? Because like I said, he's a Canadian content creator. I'm a Canadian content creator. We have a lot of content creators here in Canada that already are establishing in part of Canadian culture. So why is this move for governments to do this? Well, it's not actually there to promote Canadian content. Again, that's the legal front. That is them trying to promote censorship to silence dissenting voices and promote their agenda, saying that they're promoting Canadian values. And it's only going to get worse from here because Justin Trudeau, our ill-founded prime minister, who every day just seems more and more like a ridiculous frat boy, is petrified the idea now because Pierre Poilievre has won conservative leadership. He's in the opposition ring. He's worried that there might be the start of a mega movement here. He's worried that there's a populist revolution here in Canada. So Justin Trudeau is doubling down on stuff like this in partnership with the NDP. Because now they need a second party to also co-opt into this to make this more powerful, more corrupted. So they got Jagmeet Singh of the NDP to also co-opt into this. And that is dangerous, folks. And like I said, and like Glenn Greenwald points out, regardless of how you feel of that person, regardless, it makes no difference. Makes no difference if you disagree with them or like the person or you just or despise the person. We're all human beings. We all have dissenting voices. We all have different opinions, and we need to protect every single individual for the rights of those opinions, for the rights of freedom of speech. Because freedom of speech was indoctrinated to protect the people you despise, the people you disagree with, not the people that you like. If you already like an opinion, why does it need protection? If everyone's all on board for it, why do we need protection for it? No, it's to protect the people that we disagree with, that we argue with, that we think it's a little crazy and corruptive. And the best way to solve bad speech or speech that you don't like or hate speech is to educate people. Add more to the conversation. Build a discussion around it. Don't silence people out and throw them under the bus, because that is how you build even more hate speech. That's how you build more of this untrustworthy, un-Canadian, un-American situation. That's how crazy this gets. And kudos to the Attorney General of Texas for taking us at least that step into the right direction. And I hope people take note of it. And I hope in Canada and the United States and even around the world takes note on the fact that people have the rights of freedom of speech. This is something that they fought for years, and they're continuing to fight for every single day. And it should not be squashed out by big tech companies, by monopolies, by oligarchy that want dominant control to control the narrative, to control the culture, and to control the lifestyle, to eventually controlling individual people. And it is just absolutely chaotic. And when you have that much authoritarianism, when you have that much governmental control, we've seen throughout history how bad it is when there's such that divide, when it's a class warfare of even down to freedom of speech. You look at the Dark Ages, you look at the French Revolution. It is not good for people. It is not good for people, and they wake up and it gets even more deadly, it gets even more violent. So, thank God for people in Texas to wake up to this. Let's get some more bills passed in the right direction for free speech.